A surprise raid of an Australian politician with questionable links to the Chinese Communist Party has come at a dangerous time. Welcome back to China Uncensored. I'm Chris Chappell. Well, I tried to warn you, Australia. 2 years ago, I braved the dangers of the Australian bush to tell you about the dangers of the Chinese Communist Party. And the Communist Party is still conducting a massive influence campaign on Australia today. But the good news is that Australia is fighting back. This is Shaukat Moslman. He's not the one fighting back. Moslman is a member of the New South Wales Legislative Council for the Labour Party. The Labour Party is Australia's main left-leaning party. And New South Wales is Australia's most populous state. So, Moslman is a state-level, not a federal-level official. It's like being a state senator in the US. And now, he's at the center of an international espionage investigation. It's being led by ASIO, Australia's version of the FBI. Why is ASIO looking into Moslman? Well, he's been a very vocal supporter of the Chinese Communist Party. Just how vocal? This vocal.
The only way for China to reach its potential is for China to force a change to the rules and create a new world order.
At 6 a.m. Friday morning, a dozen officers raided his suburban Sydney home. They searched his house and then his cars because ASIO fear his political office may have been infiltrated by a foreign power, China.
That is insane. Following the raid, he was suspended from the Labour Party. Now, Moslman has not been charged, but if he is, he will be the first under Australia's new foreign interference law. The law was passed back in 2018, and China was not pleased. Even though that Australian law didn't name any country in particular, it was clearly about China. I'm sure this won't surprise you, but Moslman was a vocal critic of that law. At the time, there were several high-profile cases of Australian politicians allegedly being influenced by Chinese money. A lot of it is tied to this man, Chinese billionaire Huang Xiangmo. He's been linked to the United Front, a branch of the Chinese Communist Party itself. Simply put, the United Front's job is to expand China's influence overseas. In 4 years, Huang Xiangmo gave almost 2.7 million Australian dollars to the 3 biggest Australian political parties. For example, he allegedly gave $100,000 to a New South Wales Labour Party official. That's the same local party that Moslman belonged to. I say allegedly because that donation amount was illegal, so it was funneled through $5,000 cash donations from restaurant staff. Nothing fishy there. Here's another New South Wales Labour Party politician, Eric Rosendahl. In 2013, he resigned to take an executive job at a property development company owned by Huang. 3 weeks later, a friend of Mr. Huang's, Ernest Wong, was catapulted into Mr. Rosendahl's upper house seat. The upper house is the Legislative Council, the same one that Moslman is in. In fact, Moslman was appointed to his seat in the Legislative Council to replace Henry Tsang. Tsang resigned in 2009 after revelations he failed to declare gifts and accommodation from Chinese-backed construction group High Trade. But wait, there's more. Bob Carr is the former Labour Party premier of New South Wales. After he left office in 2013, he founded a think tank, thanks to the help of a $1.8 million donation from Huang Xiangmo. That think tank has been called a China propaganda arm, which is why Bob Carr has been called Beijing Bob. And then there's Sam Dastyari, a former federal-level MP who's been called Shanghai Sam. Huang Xiangmo gave Dastyari thousands in campaign contributions. Dastyari also got almost $1 million for the Labour Party from Huang. Daciari defended China's territorial claims in the South China Sea, which is at odds with his own party's policy. And when Daciari found out Huang Xiangmo was being spied on by Australian security agencies, he personally went to Huang's mansion and warned him his phone was being tapped. So you can see why Australia suddenly became keen on having a new foreign interference law. Now again, Moslemain has not been charged with the crime. It's only that federal authorities executed a warrant to search his house and cars. This is what Moslemain said was going on.
Firstly, I'm informed I am not a suspect in this investigation. The investigation is into certain other people allegedly advancing the goals of a foreign government, namely the People's Republic of China.
But there are concerns that he follows a very similar pattern of other Australian politicians who have fallen under Beijing's influence. He's taken at least 10 trips to China, sometimes paid for by Chinese officials. Besides his speech about how China must lead a new world order, he's given interviews to Chinese state-run media about how China and Australia must have economic cooperation. He said China today is on the rise. That's a fact. Some Australians have not as yet come to terms with this fact. He's also praised China's unswerving leadership in handling the coronavirus. For the People's Republic of China, President Xi stepped up and provided that leadership. He mustered the resources of the nation and together with the great people of China, fought it and contained it. The combined phenomenal effort of the state and the people in the fight to contain the virus was breathtaking. Well, I agree. China's coronavirus response was breathtaking in that the CCP tried to cover it up, and so a lot of people ended up dying from pneumonia. So, this isn't Moslemain's first Chinese influence rodeo. He got in trouble earlier this year for praising Xi, and again after it came out that he had written an opinion piece published in China about how the obsolete scum of white Australia were responsible for anti-Chinese sentiment. Moslemain also had his very own Huang Xiangmo. His name was John Zhang, and he has very clear links to the CCP's United Front. Moslemain hired Zhang as a staffer and speechwriter. Oh, now I get why he was saying all those positive things about the Chinese government. Zhang is listed as a vice chairman of Australia-China Economics, Trade and Culture Association, which some China experts say has become a leading Chinese Communist Party-aligned organization in Australia. Zhang also completed a propaganda training course in Beijing run by the Chinese Communist Party in 2013. According to Chen Yongling, a former Chinese consulate official who defected to Australia in 2005, that course isn't for simps. Not everyone can go. You must be a potential leader, not simply a small pawn. Zhang was also a chairman of the Australian Shanghaiese Association. Moslemain is a member too. Moslemain is also a member of the Australian Chinese Association. According to Clive Hamilton, author of Silent Invasion, China's Influence in Australia, those groups are linked to the Chinese government. Why would Moslemain hire someone like John Zhang? Obviously, we can't know for sure. Zhang may have said he could help mobilize local Chinese constituents. And there are a lot of Chinese constituents in New South Wales. But for now, Moslemain is trying to paint the investigation as a political witch hunt.
I'm aware that what might start as perhaps a police concern could quickly become a political witch hunt.
He says it like it's a bad thing. Witches are dangerous. Except for you, Sabrina. Moslemain is also trying to reframe the entire concern about Chinese Communist Party influence in Australia as racism against Chinese people.
As you are aware, the Australian Chinese community has been under sustained political, racial and physical abuse. They do not deserve the slander that they have received, and they certainly did not deserve the abuse and the violent physical attacks they have so far sustained.
I mean, yeah. Listen to what Australia's former Prime Minister Malcolm Turnbull said when the foreign interference law was being passed.
Now, I want to be very clear. We are focused on the activities of foreign states and their agents in Australia and not the loyalties of Australians who happen to be from another country.
Which China's foreign ministry spokesman said was very racist.
We were shocked at what Turnbull had said. Such comments pander to certain irresponsible reports in Australian media. They are full of prejudice against China.
So it probably won't surprise you that China is criticizing the investigation into Moslmann, a clear sign they have absolutely no relationship with him.
For some time, some politicians in Australia seem to have been suffering from paranoia and fear of China. For some time, some people in media in Australia have been passionately cooking up stories about Chinese espionage and infiltration without producing even a single tangible piece of evidence. In contrast, China has so much solid evidence of Australia spying on China.
So China is now accusing Australia of spying on China. I have to say, this is my favorite type of propaganda. China claiming that it's actually the victim of the thing that it's just been accused of. Case in point.
Australia has been the victim of sophisticated cyber attacks, Prime Minister Scott Morrison said on Friday. He said the attempted hacks have targeted all levels of government, political organisations and essential service providers for months. Morrison did not expand on what country was responsible for the attacks, but said the attacker was, quote, state-based and had stepped up its efforts recently.
Could that state-based attacker be China? Well, here's the Chinese Foreign Ministry's response that same day.
We have been a victim of cyber attacks. We have been firmly opposing all forms of cyber attacks. Our position has been clear and consistent.
We weren't responsible for the cyber attacks because we're a victim of cyber attacks. Yeah, it's classic. Anyway, back to Moslmann. Like I said earlier, he's the equivalent of a state senator. So why did the Chinese Communist Party make such an effort to get him on their side? The party has learned over the years that no foreign government official is too minor to influence. At the very least, they can use them for pro-CCP propaganda, like with Moslmann's statements on the coronavirus. But there could be bigger benefits as well, like how the Australian state government of Victoria decided to sign on to China's Belt and Road Initiative despite objections from the federal government. But overall, relations between Australia and China continue to go down the tubes, and the Moslmann investigation isn't helping. In fact, as Australia continues to investigate Chinese espionage, the Chinese Communist Party has come up with clear evidence of dangerous Australian spies in China. You see, China's the victim of spying. My favorite state-run media, the Global Times, has released this utterly damning picture proving that there were Australian spies operating in China back in 2018, including a subway map of Shanghai and a compass. Okay, if you're Australian and currently living in China, you should probably get out of there now, especially if you own a compass. And now, ready for today's Patreon question? It comes from Joe King. Is that your real name? Chris, why can't your merch include these face masks? I want one so badly now. I guess you're referring to this face mask, which was in the thumbnail of a recent episode. I like. Unfortunately, our problem has always been finding a merch store that doesn't have everything made or printed in China. And our last supplier, Teespring, shut our store down because they were afraid of being sued by Disney over this design Seamus drew. So if anyone watching has any suggestions for where we can find someone to make China Uncensored merchandise that won't be made in China and who aren't afraid of getting on the bad side of the Chinese Communist Party, please let me know in the comments below, or you can email me at chinauncensored@gmail.com. Put merchandise in the subject line. Thanks for your question, Joe King. You know, it's really difficult to find advertisers who want to sponsor a show that criticizes the Chinese regime. And on top of that, YouTube demonetizes a ton of our videos. That's why we rely on your support to keep the show going. So join what I call the China Uncensored 50 Cent Army by contributing us through the crowdfunding website Patreon. As a thank you, I might answer your question at the end of an episode. Go to patreon.com/China Uncensored to learn more. Thanks for watching China Uncensored. Once again, I'm Chris Chappell. See you next time.